welcome to episode 20 of Conversations with Women Living Well After 50. What would you do if you moved to another country, life was good, and then wham, your life was turned upside down and you had to draw on all your strength and courage? My next guest in conversation is Yvonne McClaren, Chief Forager at the Food Manifesto. Yvonne's life was turned upside down in 2018 when a sore throat became more than what she thought. With courage and determination, Yvonne began an unexpected journey, and she shares her inspiring story with us today. So let's go and join the conversation. Welcome, Yvonne, and it's so lovely to have you join me today in conversation.
Good morning, Sue. Thank you. Yes, good to be here.
Yes. Now, I've read about you on a blog. I think it was in the Women of Courage series with Denise Whalen, and I've read that I read your story, and I thought, I'd love to have you join me for a conversation, which we're doing today. Now, you had an extensive and impressive corporate career, but that all changed in 2018. You just relocated to Vietnam, and then your world really turned upside down. So can you share your story with us and what happened?
Sure. Yes, I did have I still think I have an impressive corporate career, but I made some decisions many years ago that my career. Let me backtrack a little bit. I think possibly the generation that I am was a generation that sort of fell through the cracks a bit. We weren't a generation that was necessarily seen as being corporate or career-minded, and yet that was the path that I chose to take. I chose not to have children. I chose not to get married, all those things which happened, which kind of weren't really de rigueur at the time. So. And I had some very supportive parents and family who encouraged me to really do whatever I wanted to do, and my choice was a career. So in 2017, actually, I was feeling a bit underwhelmed by life and thought, I need to go and do something. And my father had just passed away, and as it happened, I booked this month trip to Vietnam, and as a consequence of that trip, I ended up 8 months later riding through Laos and Vietnam on a motorbike and a typhoon. And in that experience, I had a lot of opportunity to sit and ponder my life and work out where I was going and what I was doing and what was making me happy and what wasn't, and all those things. And as I contemplated whether, in fact, I was going to have any more life, and a couple of occasions on the back of the motorbike.
Right.
But it was at that time that I had decided that, you know what, I've got to go back to Asia. I've got to go and change things. I've got to uproot my life and see what that experience might look like. So at the time I was working full-time in an organisation, and it was a big decision to make in the sense of I had animals to care for. I have an apartment here in South Australia. I had to move things, shift things, store things, put tenants in. You know, it wasn't just a quick decision. It was probably a year to 18, probably a year into the making, I guess. Saving money because I didn't know if I was going to get work. I didn't really know what I was going to do when I got over there. So I had to save money and budget and work all that out as well. So that's why I decided to up and move to Vietnam. There was a bit of romance going on there at the time as well. So I thought, well, we'll have a look at that and see whether that works. And I think I was about 6 months out of going. I'd booked my ticket. I'd moved out of my apartment. I had tenants in. I had got this sore throat, and I just put it down to, I remember when it was Valentine's Day in 2018. because I had to take some sponsors out for dinner, and I remember thinking, oh, crikey, I've got a sore throat, oh, well, I'm tired, I'm run down, I'm looking after my elderly mother, I'm doing this, that, and the other. I'm sure it'll be fine once I get out of the cold air and get into a warm country. So I dismissed it, went to the doctor, got some antibiotics. They didn't really work, but that was so close to me leaving. I thought, I'll just go and see how we go, really. And so I flew off and flew into Vietnam and got into the apartment that I'd rented over there. A girlfriend that was living there, she was actually moving off to Ireland, so we kind of did hand the baton over in the apartment, which really was a bit of a godsend, really, at the end of the day. And I sort of struggled on through with trying to find some work and trying to work out what I was doing, getting my yoga sorted out and where I was living and all those things. And I said to my girlfriend in Saigon, I said, look, have you got a doctor I can go and see? Because this throat's really starting to bother me. And anyway, long story short, I ended up in the hospital in Vietnam, and they looked down my nose and it's called an endoscopy. They put a camera up your nose and down, and they couldn't sort of see anything. And they said, nothing sinister. Okay. I said, oh, that's not cancer. Anyway, I was looking at trying to get some work on a remote island over there. That was looking positive, and then I had to do a visa run out of Vietnam. So I went to Indonesia to see another friend, and whilst I was there, I thought, no, something's really not right here. So I thought I'd fly home to Australia, and within that week, I had seen my doctor, who chastised me no end because I didn't tell her about the antibiotics. And I was two specialists and an ear, nose and throat specialist, and biopsies done. And yes, I had been diagnosed with a squamous carcinoma, which basically is a cancerous tumour in my throat and my tonsil.
Wow.
So, yeah, so that didn't really mean anything to me at the time. I went, oh, okay, well, that would explain the sore throat.
It's funny how we react to certain news, isn't it? That was your first reaction rather than, I suppose, before it sunk in, you were just sort of not placing too much onto it, but it would have been pretty serious.
Well, I didn't understand the implications of it, and I think actually I was in shock, really. And, I always took a very close friend with me to my appointments because, you get all this information. And I said to her, Jane, look, can you come with me and take notes?
That's a good idea. Yeah.
I'll take notes too. And, well, as it turned out, so the event manager and me came out because I organised my medical program. And I'm glad I did, because there is so much information. There are so many different things you have to do. And being on my own, I didn't have the support of a husband or a wife or a partner or whatever. And, it was a bit of a struggle. My mother wasn't great either, so I was sort of caring for her and trying to care for me. And, so I went in and they did a biopsy and said, this is what it is. And at the initial stages, they didn't think I was going to need chemotherapy, but as it turned out, I had a third of my tongue removed. I had the tumour removed, both tonsils, I think 30 lymph nodes in the end, 6 weeks of radiotherapy and 6 weeks of chemotherapy, at which point I felt like a fried, frazzled piece of pork. I had no concept of what any of this was really going to mean. So,
no. And what about you? What about your rehabilitation then? How, you said you had part of your tongue removed and everything else. So that would have been very difficult with eating and even talking and.
And to this day, yes. And I mean, I had a brilliant surgeon in Andrew Foreman who I learned afterwards that they just don't tell you everything, because if they did, you would just be so overwhelmed
Yes.
with, you know, what's going to happen to me. And everybody is so different as to how they respond and react to it. So I had a tube in my stomach, a peg feed. Andrew just kind of wandered past my hospital bed one day and said, I think we might put a tube feeder in you, a peg tube, so you can eat. And what that means is you eat everything through the tube. You do not eat anything orally, purely because you cannot. I ended up being one of those patients that could not swallow anything. So when I woke up out of surgery, I now know that I was in complete and utter shock, and I was scared. I just did not know what had hit me. And as someone said to me the other day, you've been through trauma, and you have been sort of like you've been in a head-on car crash, Yvonne, and you've had to kind of work your way out of that. So I think when the speech pathologist came around to me and gave me a little bit of water and said, here, try that, and I literally, I just couldn't do anything with it. It sort of just came out of my mouth, and then I realised, oh, I'm in trouble here. And I could tell by the look in her eye that she thought, oh. So they ended up giving me thickened water, which comes in one of the little airline things that you always throw over yourself when the aircraft takes off. And I'd never seen that before, and I couldn't even swallow that. So yeah, I was in a real state, and I ended up having my peg for, it was about 15 months in the end. And I was very, very, very determined to get that peg out of my stomach. So that's really the journey that I'm on now.
Yeah. And tell me, how did you cope mentally with all of this? You know, you were on your own, so I suppose you're relying on your own strength, inner strength, but also the support of family and friends and the medical staff. So how did you, what were you feeling during that time? I suppose scared, and there would have been times when you would have felt quite down, I would think. And
I was miserable. I mean, as an individual and as a family, and we were a very large and close-knit family, and you know, our parents raised us to be strong and practical and get on with it and be kind, and, you know, and I just, why, you know, what did I do in a previous life that I had this happen to me? So there are times when I was really down, really miserable, and luckily for me, I'm not one of those people that wallows too long. I tend to go, right, get up, get on with it. And I think too, so because I was quite physically fit, that helped me enormously to get through the process. And certainly I relied on family and friends and new friends, and I lost old friends, and there was a range of things. A lot of people just couldn't cope with the changes in me, and I guess my personality's changed a bit too. I know my speech has, and the sound of my voice. I had a very distinctive voice, and that's apparently changed. But I had to draw on a really deep spirituality that I knew was always there. And being Buddhist, I guess I really drew on my yoga practice, my meditation, and my spirituality. And at the end of the day, you're on your own, whether you're married or not married, or partnered or not partnered. So yes, I've had to draw on those things, and I wrote a lot. I wrote journals. I kept meticulous notes about what happened to me, what was happening to me. I talked to my medical team. The only thing I haven't done is speak to anyone in a sort of a psychological field, I guess.
Yeah.
And I haven't really felt the need to, and not for the first year anyway. And then, of course, COVID hit, and wow, like everybody, and I went,
Yes.
So that's coped,
Yeah. So I noticed when I was doing some research that you mentioned dysphagia. So can you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, well, with my limited knowledge, it's quite an expansive thing. No, I shouldn't have had that mouthful of coffee. I've only just learnt to swallow without aspirating, which means fluid goes back down into your airways. And I'm a very visual girl, so when I go into the hospitals, I get them to show me the half-cut models, and why is that doing that? So I get an idea about what's happening down here.
Yes.
So dysphagia is the inability or difficulty in swallowing anything, be it liquid or food. Quite often, because of the changes in structures, either from surgery and removal or radiotherapy, or in my case, both. And depending what they've taken, because you can imagine in your neck and your esophagus and your nasal passages and your tongue, your palate, there's a lot going on in this space here. And if you roast it like you would a pork joint in a Weber for 6 weeks, it's going to have some damage. There's going to be something. So that's kind of that's what dysphagia is. So I'm teaching myself to swallow again, and I'm teaching myself how to manage different foods. I was a bit of a foodie before this happened. I worked in the wine industry. I can't drink wine anymore. It all tastes like rocket fuel. Other things that happen around dysphagia, apart from the non-swallow, you can lose the ability to produce saliva. So your mouth gets very dry, which then causes acid problems, which then causes dental problems, which, it's just a beautiful gift that keeps on giving. Every single day.
And it shows you what we take for granted, doesn't it? Just having a sip of water or eating something or a glass of wine, you just don't think about even just appreciating it, really, do you? Because and then until something like that happens and you can't do it, it's sort of, that's when it really comes home. But I want to talk a little bit about the Food Manifesto and how it came about. And I think you actually started it about 2016. Is that correct? And you're the chief forager.
I'm the chief forager. Back in 2016, this is all pre-cancer.
Yes.
I don't even know where I was working in those days, but I know I was working full-time somewhere, and I'd gone to Thailand for a friend's birthday, and I was sitting again contemplating my navel, and I thought, I really want to do something around food, because that's kind of where I'd come from. That was my passion, my hobby. And I thought, I've sort of done the full circle, and I came back. So I thought about the Food Manifesto and the name and what it meant, and I knew somewhere in there that I wanted to teach people how to create really nutritious food simply and quickly, and how to make, and go back to the basics, the stocks and sauces and soups. I was amazed at how many people don't actually know how to make a good soup. So that was about 2016, and I sat on that idea, and I just kept sort of formulating it in the background whilst I continued to work full time. And I sort of ramped it up when I moved to Vietnam a couple of years ago. I thought, well, now's my opportunity to go to Vietnam and have a look at the food markets and see how I can start to align this business idea that I have. And I'm a bit of a believer in, there's a lot of Asian cuisine, Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese, Thai, Chinese, don't let me let anyone out. I find that really a wonderful way to eat. It's very light. It's very different to a Western cuisine and culture. So I tend to like to eat like that just as well now, because soups are the thing that have really saved my life, to be honest. So yeah, look, I kind of got it all right, and whilst I was convalescing, obviously I couldn't work. There were days when I just literally couldn't get out of bed. So I used the time to develop the brand, develop what I was going to do with it, develop the membership side of it, develop this, develop that, teach people X amount of, and it morphed. After what had happened to me, it morphed into something else completely from what not completely different, but it shifted. It pivoted in terms of what I was able to do and what I was able to convey to other people, I guess. So also whilst convalescing, I decided to study. So I undertook my certificate for and training and assessment online, which I've completed now, thankfully. And that all sort of happened through COVID, because I thought, well, we can't go out with a compromised immune system. I really made use of that time to study and look at other areas that I might need to support build my skill base, really. So so the Food Manifesto morphed a little bit into something a little bit different, and I started looking at helping people with dysphagia. And when I really looked into that, I was horrified to see people trying to vitamize Big Macs with fries and why, I don't know. When you go through this process, Sue, you need such a nutrient-dense diet because the body is working overtime trying to heal itself. And I noticed that there was a bit of a gap in the market between when you leave the hospital and stop talking to your dietitian or your speech pathologist, you get home, and if you've got a carer or someone who can prepare your meals, more power to you. But if you're home on your own like I was, you kind of had to think, oh, well, I can't eat that. So what am I going to do? What am I going to put in my peg? And they do give you bottled food, and it's an artificial little bottle, and you've got to drink 8 of them. When I say drink, you've got to put 8 of those bottles in your peg every day. After I was on those for about 12 months, and you lose the ability to swallow, you lose the ability to taste. So, yes, the Food Manifesto morphed a bit. I then wanted to help people look at their diet. How can we create whole food and real food and put that either in my tube or start to drink it so that I can transition off this. As I might have mentioned, I really wanted to get off my peg tube, and it took me quite a long time, and there was no information out there about how to actually transition. There's a lot of information about eat high protein, don't lose weight, and keep your calorie intake up, but it doesn't really tell you how to do it, particularly when you can't swallow. So that's where I've morphed to at this stage. And I was just going to say, the drinking the liquid, you get this liquid that comes with your pig feed, and it plays with your mind, it plays with your skin, it plays with your internal organs. It's not a great thing to be on for any great length of time. It certainly saved my life, but I'm very now keen to put some interest back into people's food when you have difficulties like I've had to eating.
Yeah, and I suppose that only comes about from people like yourself who've had that experience. Unless you've actually walked in the shoes of that person, you don't really know or understand. And as you say, there's probably a lot of medical advice, but not so much practical advice. So I think that's, really good that you're working towards that. But tell me how the whole experience has changed the way you look at life, because, you know, I'm listening to you talk and I'm thinking many of us would probably just want to give up after a
You
little
do.
while, because
Yeah,
you know,
do.
it's just not easy. And you probably have days where you thought, oh, is this ever going to end, or am I ever going to get through it? So you did mention that you're Buddhist, so I assume that meditation and the spiritual side and your yoga helps. But how have you, you know, have you changed your thinking on the way you view life and the way you're living your life, apart from the eating side of things, which is a huge change?
Yeah, look, I have, and there were, yeah, there are days, and I just woke up and went, really, again, you know, and I suspect, not that anyone's ever told me this, Sue, but I think this head and neck cancer, I don't think it ever really goes away. I think you just learn to live with it, and it's a new way of living. Yes, it has changed me. I don't suffer fools, not that I used to suffer fools either. I am pretty fearless these days, and I'm also, where once upon a time I might have hesitated about something, I now go, you know what, I may not be here next week, so I'm just going to go and do that now because I want to do it. All those, you know, world problems that we think about, you know, now I just, whatever, get over it, move on. I mean, I never ever held grudges against people or situations, and certainly things just, whatever. I used to be a bit of a worrier, like a bit like my father. I'd go, you know, what if? I don't do that anymore. I can mentally now go, you know what, why would you spend the next 5 minutes, 5 days worrying about that, Yvonne? Can you change it? No? Then move on. You know, so I was always pretty tenacious before this happened, and I think that has propelled me forward. I'm very fit now. I also lost 25 kilos. I've gained 10, so I'm sort of sitting at my ideal weight now. And look, it's, in many respects, it's given me a whole other life, a whole new life, and one that doesn't involve, you know, alcohol, cigarettes, lots of food. You know, I've had to change everything really, and that hasn't always come easy, Sue. It's always been a bit, you know, geez, I'm going to have to do that too. And you just have to suck it up and take it on board and do it. So
yes. And I mean, they're all things that people enjoy, aren't they? Especially the eating and the socialising that comes with the, you know, that. And there must be days where you sort of think, well, what's left? You know, where's the joy in life? But I think that when something like this happens to you, you do look deeper into who you are, and you do find joy in the simple things in life that you might have glossed over before, when, you know, we all take so much for granted in everyday life, don't we?
I think mindfulness, I mean, I know that's a really catchphrase thing to say at the moment, but, you know, I am incredibly mindful every single day, moment. I live in that moment. Because, notwithstanding that, sometime last year I was actually told that the treatment hadn't worked and they couldn't give me a life expectancy and there was nothing more that they could do. And I thought, right, okay, well, in that case, turns out they were wrong. So, yeah, I've had a couple of kicks that, really made me reassess what's important, what's not, who's in my life that sucks the living hell out of me, and who's in my life that lifts me up and supports me. And that stays with me every single day. Yeah,
that's a great way to live too. So I would think it's hard to look to the future, but do you have, you know, do you have goals and dreams still that you want to achieve?
Look, in many ways, I actually find it easier to look to the future now. As far as I'm concerned, I'm cured. I don't have cancer. I'm cancer-free. I've got a few issues up here that I have to deal with, but it's made me incredibly life savvy. If I wasn't life savvy before, I'm certainly life savvy now, and I'm committed now to helping other people who go through this that may not have had either the financial or relationship support or the emotional support or the education or whatever it was that they were lacking. I'm now so committed to helping people with this issue of dysphagia, inability to eat, or what sort of food can I eat, what can't I eat, creating recipes and meals for them and showing them how I did it. And that kind of encompasses everything, your mind, your body, your soul, your food, everything. So that's where this comes in, my no feeding tubes, which is where the Food Manifesto is sort of going to morph into now, which is quite a direct pathway, if you like, for me going forward. And I sort of hope that I get an opportunity to talk about my experience on a universal stage too, because well, I think I've been quite blessed that I've managed to come through it as well as I have.
Well, I was just going to say, I'm listening to you and I know it sounds a bit cliche, but I am very inspired by people like yourself that, we all go, oh, we've got challenges, but really, unless it's your life that's threatened in some way, like with an illness or whatever, you're not really challenged, are you? I mean, that to me is the ultimate challenge. And I don't know, I just think that people, I know my mum had breast cancer she died 30 odd years ago, and she had breast cancer when there wasn't really much research known about it. And she battled it for about 10 years and passed at 63, which was far too young. But but she was so strong, and I never heard her complain. And I think we can find an inner strength when something really important happens to us, like a health scare or a health issue. I think that we do tend to, and I don't know from experience, but just observing others and listening to your story, looking at my mum and other people that I've known who have a health crisis, you seem to not complain. You get on with it, you find that inner strength, and yet if that hadn't happened, you might have just been complaining like we all do about the little things that happen in life. And I just think that when something life altering like this happens, you can find that inner strength.
Absolutely. And every day I still think it's taken some time for me to come to terms with it, and I'm still haven't really come to terms with it. But I'm also a stubborn little bugger. I won't I have a dear friend in New Zealand. She calls them donkey legs. When donkeys refuse to move, she said, "You got your donkey legs out, Yvonne?" And I said, "Yep, I do, Dot." And there were just some things that I have just willed, and I've got, this is not going to change. This is not going to happen to me. I'm going to fight this every step of the way. So, and for breast cancer people, it's different. You can cover breast cancer up a bit. You can't cover up spectrum. You can't cover up massive scars. You can't cover up, but again, I've had some amazing support around in my outdoor fitness groups. I had two gorgeous trainers who dragged me back out to physical fitness when I could barely lift my arms up. And it's who you surround yourself with, and you'll be amazed at who comes out of the woodwork to help you. And you'll be equally amazed at those that retreat and just drop you because they just can't manage.
They don't know how to handle it. Yeah, yeah.
No.
Well,
So,
well, you
happen, you know.
yes, and that's a shame. But then you don't need those people in your life, as you said before. You want the people that are going to lift you up and bring energy to your life rather than those sucking it away. So, before we go today, and it's would like to ask you a question that I ask everyone, and I think this would be quite poignant, you know, regarding your journey that you're going through. But what does being a woman living well mean to you?
I thought about that question last night, and it really hasn't changed, even despite me going through head and neck cancer. What it means to me is being physically capable of doing the things that I want to do. Now, whether that's kickboxing or yoga or kayaking or in my case, traveling solo around the world and jumping on and off trains and bikes with backpacks on, having that physical capability, and also getting older in life and still having that physical capability of being able to do that, literally being able to do it. Physically and mentally, I guess that's what living well means to me, and having access to fresh water, fresh food, and not taking that for granted. So I'm very mindful of that now, and now even more so. Those last two things, water and food, have become a little bit more important for me.
Yes.
Ways, and not actually being able to access it, but also being able to ingest it. So I think that's probably what living well, you know, 50 and beyond. See, I'm still in denial that I'm 50, and that was years ago. So,
well, hey, I've just turned 63, so you know,
wow.
but it gets better, you know. So I'm happy. I don't think of myself as an age, and you probably don't either. You just sort of you do what you feel rather than going, oh, you know, I shouldn't be doing this. I'm over 60 or over 50 or whatever. But look, it's been really a pleasure talking to you today, and I so admire you and your courage, and you've got just such a lovely personality and a great attitude to it all. And I do hope that people will reach out to you. I'll be leaving some links in the show notes that we can contact you with and find out more information about what you're doing, because it's such a special message that you're giving, not just the educational side on the cancer and the, you know, the no feeding tubes and that sort of thing, but also your mental and spiritual attitude that you have to life, which I think people, whether they're going through what you've been through or they're not, it is still inspiring and something that we should all aspire to living to. So I thank you for that today. And for those of you who are listening today and listening to Yvonne's story, please reach out to her through the show notes that I'll be leaving, and share this episode with someone who you think would benefit from listening to us and the topic that we've discussed today. And remember to share and like the video, and also to subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss a conversation. Thanks very much for joining me today, Yvonne.
Thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure. And hopefully someone's picked up a little pearl out of that. I hope it's given someone a bit of hope somewhere. But yes, thank you for the opportunity. It's great.
Yeah, no, there's been many pearls there, I can assure you. And that's all for today. So don't forget to embrace and live life every day, even more so after listening to Yvonne's story today. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.
Thanks, Sue. Bye.
Thanks, Yvonne. Bye.